Hello, my friends, and welcome to another Toronto Magic Company behind the scenes episode. And this was a strange one. This is actually one that Ben and I started talking about when around January 2021, we thought, wouldn't it be fun if we did an episode or a conversation about some of the failures that we had in 2020? You know, Ben and I had an early conversation about, should we try to do some crazy stuff or should we try to sit back and get government checks and hold our breath? And we decided to just do some crazy stuff. And we had a lot of projects, thankfully, a lot of them that worked, that were awesome, that were epic. You know, we got a chance to launch unconventional.fun. We got a chance to do a lot of virtual magic shows. I got a chance to really help a ton of magicians enter the virtual space, which has been just epic. But also, among some successes, there have been some epic failures. So this episode is dedicated to all of the giant failures of things that we launched in 2020. And we decided to just kind of share everything, all the different failures. We tried to break down why things failed and maybe what we can learn from it in the future and what you can learn, because a lot of us are launching things online now that things have shifted into the online world. So hope you enjoyed this strange episode. I would love to know if this is something that's interesting for you. Oh, by the way, we are releasing a video version of this episode on Toronto Magic Company's YouTube, where you get to actually watch some of these videos with us, and we're going to shorten it and make it a little more easier to watch. And I'd love to see you there because we're going to be making some cool YouTube content. So we'll see you at Toronto Magic Company's YouTube for the video version, but for the long form audio version, this was like an hour-long conversation, but our biggest, marketing and just other failures that happened in 2020. Hope you like it. Hello, friends. Jonah here. That's Ben. And we are here to talk about 2020. 2020 was a really, really crazy year. We started and we were performing in the Art Gallery of Ontario.
Which was amazing.
Yeah, we had all these incredible shows lined up. And then poof, the worst magic trick of all time, all of our shows completely and entirely disappeared. And for us and for many other magicians, it was a time of invention. And we are super lucky. We came up with a lot of different things. We had a lot of fun successes, with virtual magic shows, running virtual magic conventions, putting on ticketed virtual shows. We had a lot of successes, but we also had a lot of failures. So we thought
a lot
of failures, a lot of things that didn't work out. So we thought that we would go through some of our biggest, most epic failures in 2020 and talk about them, maybe talk about what went wrong, why they didn't work, and maybe give some context as to how weird projects like this are created and what it kind of looks like maybe behind the scenes to when a full project, not just a segment of a project, doesn't make it to see the light of day, or it does see the light of day and it probably shouldn't, or something like that.
Crashes and burns epically.
So before we get into it, is there something you want to say about kind of failed projects or anything else like that before we dive into them?
Yeah, so I have a Post-it note hanging in my bedroom, and there's a piece of advice on it. It's a quote from the guy who is in charge of making Magic the Gathering now. So his name is Mark Rosewater, and he had a beautiful quote in one of his talks, and he said, "Stop worrying about evoking a negative reaction and focus on creating a strong reaction." And I wrote that out. I think it's really cool. And so a lot of the projects that we took on in 2020 were projects that some people may have warned us about and said that doesn't seem like a great project. Yeah. Even maybe internally, one of us, usually him, said it may not be a smart idea, but I wanted to try to do things that push the boundaries a little bit, that were explorative and were fun. And what was cool about 2020 is because we were shooting projects in our house and because we had sort of people watching understood that because of the pandemic lockdown, we had a limited crew and limited resources. It gave us, I don't want to say permission to be not as good.
There was sympathy in the air with a lot of projects where this being the ground floor, the beginning of something, there was a lot of sympathy because, all of our everything's disappeared and we're trying new things. So, in a lot of ways, that helped us in other places, or maybe.
Yeah, the barrier to entry felt like it disappeared. Like if I wanted to make a TV show, it seems like there's a huge budget. You need all these things. Yeah. But if you're starting to make like a YouTube show and you're doing it during the pandemic, like it just might be you and your camera. So we tried a lot of different things. We took the risk. Some of them I thought were really fun and successful. That's obviously a topic for a different video or podcast, but yeah, these ones were the ones that failed.
Yeah, so I don't have a specific order, but I guess let's kind of go all over in terms of which some of them. Maybe we'll start in the middle. We'll work our way down to ones that were kind of failures, maybe we can discuss, and then we'll maybe end with some of the big old mega failures. So let's start. I think a really good place to start is unconventional.book.
Yes,
unconventional.book, because while you go run and grab it, I'll give some context. We just finished running our second virtual magic convention called Magic Land under the brand unconventional.fun. And the first magic convention, virtual 8-bit magic convention, came with a book, unconventional.book. And this book was a lot of learning moments. And I will say that there were more hiccups in creating this book than just shipping the book. But certainly the shipping of the book was such a bad blunder that we've sent almost every single person a second copy because the first copy didn't even make it there. So Ben, why don't you give us a little bit of context as to what happened with
So I just want to make this clear. It wasn't my fault for the failure, but it was completely my fault. So here's what happened. I'm embarrassed to admit this. It's been a long time since I've sent mail. And so I thought I was being very clever, and I printed the label with the to address and the from address on the same label.
And basically anybody who knows how to read mail knows that in the center of the envelope is where it's going to, and in the top corner over here, that's where it is coming from. That's a return address.
And I thought I was being clever because I was like, oh, we'll save stickers and it's better for the environment.
So what happened is we basically sent 250 books to ourselves.
These are ones that have returned to us, and we've sent out other copies to these people. But this one went all the way to Buenos Aires in Brazil, and before it was returned. This one, Canada Post decided that it was somehow damaged, and so they sealed it up for me and returned it.
They somehow knew where sending it back was.
I don't even know what happened. It went to like 9 different cities bouncing around.
But there is without a question that 250 pieces of mail, and exactly what he's saying, like there were shipment houses in like Toronto that was telling us, hey, we got a bunch of them. There were some people that got to, some didn't. So at this point in time, out of 250 books we've sent out a second batch of 250 to almost every single person.
And there's still people who are messaging us daily saying, we just got our books.
And there's still people who have not got their books, and we're like, okay, well.
There's also people who have now gotten 2 copies of books. It was a real fiasco.
Yeah, an absolute mess.
And it was a bummer from both of our perspectives, certainly for mine, because it was my fault. So I felt that, but also like the event I thought was quite successful. And so we pulled off what we felt was the hardest part of the event. And then it was, it felt like in sports where the team works really hard and takes the lead in the last 2 minutes, and everybody starts celebrating too early. And then it's like the other team hits a 3, other team hits a 3 again, Steele hits a 3, and you're like, oh my gosh. And that's what it felt like.
And by the way, not just that, but there was also delays in us getting the book out in the first place. Like the content we were getting from the performers, we wanted to get it before the convention, but there were delays. So after we got the content from the performers, then we had to get it proofread and we had to get it edited. And then we learned a bunch of lessons there because Ben wrote the whole book on an editing platform that he didn't pay for. So he couldn't export it, which I knew. I warned him. And then, so basically not only did we send the book out late and then all of them bounced back, but also it took us an extra 2 or 3 months to actually send the book out. So people that were waiting that were like, okay, we finally got it out. It didn't even arrive to them, and then they kept waiting and waiting. So that was a rough one. What can we learn from it? Or what can people learn from it?
Well, there was a bunch of things. The first is that I should have taken the time to, especially with something that important, look up the process. Now, I did go in and I did it with a male person there, and nobody flagged it the first time, which was a bummer. But still, it was on me because it was my thing and I took it on. So I should have done that. I think I took on a lot of different projects in that. For like my first time putting out, mass printing a book that way, laying out the book that way, compiling like an anthology that way, plus putting together a convention on a brand new platform. Plus it was our first time like putting on an event like this for magicians and all these things. And like I waited to the last minute on certain things. So I was learning on the fly and I didn't have time to respond to mistakes and stuff. So that was like, you know, when we talk about epic failures, what you'll often see is like it's like a catastrophic series of failures. Like step one, this didn't happen, which led to like this being delayed, which led to this being rushed, which led to this going out late.
Exactly. And the reason, by the way, that the books went out without approvals, because like you said, they were rushed because we were so behind on getting those books out to everybody that we didn't cross all of our T's and dot our I's. And I feel like, you know, for me, the lesson is that like,
that's why if you got the book, you'll notice that near the center, there's a centerfold nude of Jonah.
Hey, really?
Which he did not see when
never mind.
I took this out of this one.
Oh, okay. My lesson from it is that, you know, I'm actually a big fan of the like what's called like there's just in case learning and just in time learning, right? So I'm a big fan of just in time learning, which is like we learned how to make a book after we promised they're going to make a book. So just like, okay, this is something we'll be able to figure out. And then we figured out how to do instead of just in case learning, which is I'm going to learn how to make a book in case one day, you know, I end up making a book. So I'm a big fan of just in time learning, but I think part of it is the organization so that the just in time learning isn't like, you know, so last minute that there end up being blunders. So that was that was a little blunder. The next one I want to talk about is our swag, because when we started doing live stream shows, newest trick in the MacBook, we thought, hey, let's get some Toronto Magic Company swag that people can grab. So I got a few of them.
And yeah, part of that thinking process was that people wanted to support the shows, and at the time we were only doing free shows, free public shows. So people would ask, how do we support?
Posters.
And we didn't want to ask for donations. So we thought, rather than you donating to us, you know, if you want to send us $20 donation, why don't you buy $20 worth of product? And then you get stuff, we get stuff. It looks good for us on social media. You end up with cool takeaways. Like, it's a win-win-win for everybody. And I like, I think we got some beautiful product.
You know, I think they're cool images. I'm really happy about, you know, the coasters. And the reality is this isn't a failed project because we've got cool stuff. You know, there are the people that did want it, you know, got their stuff mailed to them. They've got awesome things. The only reason why I feel like it's a failed project is because we don't have a front closet anymore. It's full of swag that we didn't sell. And, you know, for me, I think we're in, and Ben and I discuss this all the time, but I think we're in an online era that like, you know, we shouldn't have to have a box full of something sitting in our house in order for people to support us. And I was concerned that, first of all, I was excited about it as well. You know, I don't want to make it seem like, you know, I was very excited about having our stuff on a mug. I think it's super cool. But my concern was that, you know, people wanted something that's like valuable or helpful or, you know, to see a show or, you know, to learn some magic or something. And that getting an object with our branding on it was not going to be terribly appealing. But then on the other hand, we worked with an amazing artist, you know, Graham Reed, and we made what I think is a sick shirt, especially for somebody who is living in Toronto. You know, there's Magic, there's Toronto, there's the raccoon who we named Presto. So I think it's a pretty cool shirt. So
Jonah and I have mixed feelings about this project, the merch, because number one, I envisioned the merch being more successful at our in-person events.
I agree.
So I pictured, you know, people come to our events, we sell them out, and that means like 120 to 150 people come and see us. And I think if after the show there was a little table with merch, we might sell $200, $300, $400, $500 worth of product.
Yep.
So that I see. I was surprised when we started listing the merch because I mentioned we did it as a way that people could support us without having to donate. And we listed merch and then people continued donating. And
people sent, which was like, very strange. We're like, is it so ugly that you don't?
But people do like it.
No, they do.
And, you know, we like them and we use them now for giveaways and other stuff.
And by the way, they're still available and people do still buy them every now and again.
I am very proud of this shirt. So I spent a lot of time with the Gramazing Reed working and developing this idea, and he knocked it out of the park. And I really wanted to design an apparel thing that I would wear, and so I wanted these bright colors. This was made more for summertime. That's what I had envisioned, and the logo and stuff, I sort of like reminiscent of like hype brands and other stuff. But like I wanted to make a cool shirt that I would wear that depicts Toronto and Magic. I think we succeeded. So yeah, I'm just I wish more had sold, but I think when in-person shows come back,
so I'm not terribly concerned about it, but we do have 2 boxes, three
which
boxes
is what Jonah said was going to happen.
My biggest fear of it was we're going to have boxes of t-shirts that we have to store in our house. We're going to have rows and rows and rows of mugs. Yeah,
these were the pins, the little lapel pins, because you can order 250 and they go in a small box.
And again, same as this, we have a couple hundred mugs, and the mugs specifically are, we love them a lot because they're fun. You can see them. The
inside is called Curtain Theater Red.
That's right. We use them around the house. The reason why the mugs are the worst is because to ship them, it's heavy and like wide. The object is heavy and wide. So even if the mugs are as cheap as possible, the shipping is like not ideal. Yeah, so we put together a kit on the site and kind of threw everything together so that we can ship it all together and save some money. So if you do want swag, that's where you can get it. But so far, we mostly have a cupboard.
If you get stuff, it's pretty exclusive because no one else has bought it.
That's right. Nobody else has it.
So limited release, unintentional limited release.
Let's talk about Magic Out Loud.
I guess you're going in order of worst failures of the year.
No, I'm kind of bouncing around because we'll go to that, and then we'll make our way up to the really key failures.
Yeah, Magic Out Loud.
Magic Out Loud. So I actually have here a video, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the video. But should we explain what Magic Out Loud is first? Actually, let's, because I think this video is... Now you're like, no, because
is us begging. I think that was the video where we're begging people, please.
Yeah. So what happened was after our first unconventional.fun, the same one where we screwed up in sending 250 books, we had a lot of people who were part of the Magic community, and we had a lot of support, and we thought it was a great idea to launch our own Magic club. And Ben and I had a lot of ideas about what would make for a good Magic club. We thought there would be lectures, we thought there would be performing, we thought there would be forums, we thought there would be all this different stuff. And after unconventional.fun, after the first one, we told people about it at the event and after the event, and it seemed like nobody needed another virtual Magic club. So
the consensus was there was already enough of them out there. There's forums and other things for people to engage. And that's what people, I think, were looking for from a Magic club traditionally, is that it's a social group to discuss Magic and to connect over Magic.
So after we launched it at unconventional.fun, the first one, and got mass support on it, which was, helpful for us to know that people didn't want it, we pivoted what it was. And we said, instead of us having lecturers come in and instead of us having, different things like that, what we were going to do is we were going to turn it on its head and have the magicians perform for the lecturers. So now the best magicians in the world would watch your magic and give you notes and give you feedback.
And the concept, I think, made a lot of sense because when we were engaging with magicians in person pre-pandemic, a big thing that we were not pushing, but trying to support was the idea of performing magic.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a club meeting and you talk magic, it doesn't mean you necessarily ever try it. But if your objective is to get it on stage or to get it in front of people, then the jamming you do, the practice, the club, all the things are to move towards that goal. So when we moved online to this program and we listened to what people said, there was a lot of forums to talk about magic and to get advice on what they should read or buy, tips on practicing, but there weren't a lot of opportunities for you to get better in the performing unless you were just straight up doing shows.
Yeah, totally.
And the end pitch was that if we got 25 people for the program,
by the end of the week,
we would do it. We had 11 people at the time, and we said, if we get it up to 25, we'll do it.
And then we ended up getting it up to 20 people.
We got more than that.
No, I think it was 20, maybe 21 or something.
I think we may have just exceeded the number, but what we ended up saying was that it took us multiple messages, private messaging people.
Yeah, a lot of people were supporting it on their goodwill, basically, instead of it being for them. And the other thing, and I actually have mixed feelings about this because in part, I can hopefully identify some of the reasons why I think it failed. But another thing is a little bit surprising and frustrating to me. I think the thing that's frustrating is the program of having magicians help you work on your magic is so invaluable. And whenever we create something that feels like it's not the same part of what the magic community is always selling, which is like tricks and tricks and tricks and tricks and tricks. Whenever we're putting something together that's like special to that, like the podcast, I'm excited about the podcast because it's about theory and it's an angle that doesn't really exist so much in magic. And for the amount of magicians that talk about how important performance is and how important to work on your performance is, I think when push comes to shove and they were given an unbelievable opportunity to do that, it's like, it feels like something they don't want to do. And like, if I was in that position, I probably would do the same. Like, I'd probably be like, I don't know that I want the best magicians of the world watching my magic. So I can identify places why there are faults. But I was a little bit surprised because I thought that in concept of a club focused on your performing, and that was why we called it Magic Out Loud, a club focused on your performing was, in theory, a good idea.
Yeah, I think that there were elements that were interesting. I think that some of the, I think maybe some people may have been turned off by the quick pivot, made them feel like it wasn't.
I definitely think, and we can talk about some of the reasons why it failed.
But I think that, like, and also from our end, it would have been extremely hard for us to sustain,
to actually pull off,
because it was just the cost and everything was silly, and there were a lot of issues. But the feeling, I think that some people were not sure that they wanted to explore virtual performing. There were some people who didn't really see the value in performing if they've been doing magic 30 years and don't perform yet. Like, it's a hard sell. And then there were people who were performing and felt like they already had a community of people who were willing to watch. So there were a lot of things that just made it not click at the time. And I think what the big takeaway for me from that was that, we look at our opportunity costs and we could have made this work. We could have hit our 25 and made this work, but we realized, like, we're not serving people the way that we best could. We aren't, like, when we talk about Magic Land or Unconventional.fun, like, these were projects that we did. The response was great. People loved it. They were fun and exciting to work on. It created goodwill.
It's clear when a project succeeds and when it fails. It's really, really clear. And when the people who support something are exclusively your diehard fans, plus the people who you begged to support it so that it exists.
It's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's a sign versus when, like, strangers who you don't know but overheard about a project support it. It's a good sign, right? So I think we felt both in different projects, but Magic Out Loud was certainly one that was tough to sell, and it would be tough to pull off. And I think the other thing that you said, which is right, is the opportunity cost. Like, we tackled so many other fun, interesting projects, and for us to do a project that people didn't want and that was costly to run, not a great idea.
Yeah.
It's a nice logo.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Nice logo,
cool,
but not a project that was successful. Anything else you want to say about Magic Out Loud?
No.
Okay, the next one that I want to talk about is our Halloween show. And this is interesting because the show itself was fun. There was a lot of support. People loved it. Everyone except for one woman who really didn't like it in the chat. She didn't like the show. But everyone else seemed to like the show.
People told her to shut up in the chat. So.
That's true. No. But people liked the show. They liked the experience. They liked the bonuses. But for us, we had...
I forgot about her. She was awesome.
Right. But for us, we had a few hiccups. The main one of which was a gargantuan pivot in the marketing that was actually the whole, point of what we were doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. So we, at the beginning of this, we talked about creating projects that evoke strong reactions. And that means looking for projects that you're passionate about. So I like horror films, and Jonah does not. And Jackie, who was helping us on the project, likes horror films. And as we started developing this Halloween show, it was getting, like, progressively, I think, a little scarier, and there were some creepy ideas. We're trying to figure out ways to scare people. And we produced this content for the trailers. And then we kept working on the show and developing, and we realized that we probably weren't going to scare people the way we wanted. And the show started becoming a little bit more tongue-in-cheek and silly and family-friendly. And we really liked the direction that we came up with. And then the
trailers came out.
Yeah, and the trailers were designed
really
to be scary.
Yeah.
So they played off to old horror, like, they were references to old horror films, and they were creepy, slow movements and things. And so you look at these trailers, and then you look at the website, and anybody who looked at the trailers
that was not interested when they got to the website.
And anybody
who saw the website then saw the trailers, they were like, this is too scary for my family. So like whoever thought it was a family show was scared away by the trailers, and whoever was excited by the trailers was scared away by the fact that it was a family show. Yeah. So after running our trailers on all of our social media and our Facebook ads for 2 weeks and spending a bunch of money and time, we turned them all off, threw them all out, and just sold it with our poster and said, we changed our mind. It's a family show. And then it ended up being a family show. So that was definitely one part of it. The other challenge or failure, I would say, was the recording of the content. You know, this was a point where first of all, we winged a lot. As our first ticketed virtual magic show, we winged a lot of different things, which showed, I think. The other thing that happened during it is, I think that because we were so quick to the punch of virtual magic, when we tried to bring other performers on to do virtual magic spots, a lot of the times it was easier or smarter for them to record a pre-recorded segment instead of a live part. And maybe that's on us and not on them. I don't want to project that. But if I remember correctly, at the time, you know, the performers that we were calling on hadn't done a ton of virtual magic shows. So we were going to like host live and cut to their acts. And that ended up posing some problems just because there were videos that we couldn't do anything with that maybe we needed to, you know, like we said, when we pitched the project at the beginning, it was scary. So we sent people off to do scary things. And then by the time it came back to being a family friendly thing and we got back videos that were legitimately scary, you know, we didn't really know how to utilize them. Do you want to talk at all about that?
Yeah, I mean, there were problems internally with the way the show was developed, a big part because of the way that I operated. We treated a lot of this like brainstorming sessions, and the way that normally we do brainstorming sessions for live shows is like, for better or for worse, we brainstorm sometimes up until the night of the show, and then we do it on stage. And so that's not great because you want to give yourself time to prepare and practice. So for these shows, the virtual shows, we wanted to pre-record segments, and there were things that hadn't been locked in that I was still changing and ideas. And then I sort of say like, okay, well, shoot this. And people are like, Ben, we can't like go out, shoot this and edit this now. Yeah, and have it done. It doesn't work that way. So there was a lot of frustration caused by poor organization and last minute changes. And so internally, we had to, you know, one of the things that we talked about afterwards is we have to put ourselves in a position to succeed. And that means give ourselves the time to like make changes. And, you know, even like with Magic Land, which was a big success, the night before I was trying to update the world and things were broken and I couldn't figure it out. And I finally got in touch with support, and they said, oh, we apologize. The whole system is down across North America. It's a glitch we're working on. Now, that's not my fault that they had a glitch, but it is my fault that some of the major changes that needed to be done the night before. Right.
So I learned from a teacher in elementary school, very, very important. And the way she said it was great is she said, printers tend to die on the last day. Like printers tend to die the day before you have to hand the thing in, or the hour that you have to hand the thing in. And I think that the point of it is that it's not actually true. Quote. I don't think that objects fault closer to deadlines, but I think that objects going wrong and faults happening and mistakes happening at deadlines are way more memorable and are way more impactful because it completely screws up everything. And I think that, you know, there was
way more detrimental. Like something that's a small issue 2 weeks before the event could become a massive issue the day. Like if you have a prop that's not working right for the show because you need to get safety pins, that's a really minor issue. You just go to the corner store and buy them. Unless it's 40 minutes before the show.
Right, and the corner store is closed and now it's absolute mayhem.
Now it's problematic.
So that's why you need, you know, backup safety pins. So that was a big lesson in producing of our events. And even still, you know, we still struggle with it because as you get closer to projects, things get more exciting, and sometimes doing things 8 months before they ever happen is a little hard, is just hard to do, you know?
It's much easier to sit down over French fries and a burger or a can of Coke or a beer and talk about all the fun ideas you have for a show. So that's the easy part sometimes of the work. So like, you know, if the show is a month away, it's easy to spend 3.5 weeks talking about the show. It's a lot harder to spend a week talking about the show and then say, now
3 weeks working on it.
We get all the props and we start working. And so like that's where we're in now, because we have a show coming up in like 20 days.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, we have a little structure for it. It's time to get the stuff together.
And I think what's happened to us is like in person, we could spend 3 weeks up to a show working on something. because of how it took form in our shows, and we were only playing a small part sometimes. But with virtual, I guess we try to do the same thing a lot, which is to spend the 3 weeks before a show working on something, and then we realize that we have actually another 3 weeks of production, and we didn't plan for that.
Right.
So the big aha in virtual with a lot of these projects is that, like, we don't just go from planning to executing. There is planning and production and executing, which we sometimes got to skip over in in-person things.
And even when we did it, like, it's part of as our systemization. Like, sometimes we would get to a in-person venue and you would run off to go pick up posters.
Right.
Well, I would quickly run up and start setting up the chairs, and the event's at 3 hours, and it's like, that is stuff that, we have to. And as we get better at this, like, I know that there's things that we're like, well, we know from experience that takes 3 weeks now or 2 weeks to do.
And hopefully, by the way, these failures, we're trying to, grab some little aha moments or little, lessons that both for ourselves, but also for anybody listening to this, that, these, like, in the wake of running magic conventions and trying new things and putting on virtual magic shows that, have never been done before, and doing conventions never been done before, and doing corporate shows, all this different stuff, like, there's going to be blunders. There are going to be things that you try and don't work. And I think one of the big takeaways for me before we get to, I think, the last two is the quantity of things that we've tried in the last 12 months is really, really exciting, and like,
it's pretty amazing to talk about. I see here we have a list of 7 failures, but among those 7 failures were also like dozens and dozens of successes.
Yeah. And even things, by the way, there's successes, there's failures, and there's things that, like, kind of worked. And maybe I would put swag and the Halloween one into a segment of, like, kind of worked. But we've had other things where, like, we didn't get the launch or the numbers that we had expected, or, different things like that.
Disappointments.
Yeah, different things have happened like that. But I think these are definitely some that we can identify some bigger failures.
I also think that what's so amazing about the failures that we're identifying is that, well, they didn't work for a variety of different reasons. Most of them created some level of goodwill. Like, we found people who wanted to be parts of our community. We found ways to engage with them. We were honest when something wasn't an effective way to engage with them. Some of the people that were going to be involved with Magic Out Loud, I think 4 out of 5 of the people that we had pre-booked ended up being part of our different events that we did. And the last remaining person is going to be part of the next event. And, like, with the product and other stuff, there were people who liked it. And with the Halloween show, there was internal issues and a lot of stress, and there was some ill will that was created among friends for a little bit that got resolved by, like, us getting food together, sitting, having fun, playing games, and, like, we're excited to work on other projects. So I think we learned valuable lessons. There's an Emerson quote: "To the philosopher and the sage, all experiences are friendly and profitable, all days holy, all men divine." And all of these experiences I felt were profitable, in the sense of, like, we gained experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like,
without burning any bridges.
Yeah. And even like, things like swag, like, not profitable in the sense
money.
of, we got bags of t-shirts in our house that we paid for that will take probably till well after the pandemic for us to sell out of. But
expect contests where we give away t-shirts for a while.
But we learned a lot about selling t-shirts. We learned a lot about quantity. We learned a lot about, the price of these things. We learned a lot about shipping. There's a lot of things that we learned, and I'm pretty pumped about it. Okay, the next one that I want us to talk about, which is the second biggest failure, but I think one that we've got the best footage of.
This one we can play the whole video.
Yeah, but give me 1 second to load it in. So hold on. You've been invited to join us for a never-before-seen company.
One that asks the impossible. This is going to challenge your mind, your body, and your soul.
Really, your soul?
I don't know. Mind and body, at least.
Okay, just your mind and body.
My name is Ben Train. This is Jonah Babbins.
And this is Hat Trick. Nice. Each round, our magicians are going to be given a challenge that they have to create an original piece of magic to. Those challenges are given to us by the one and only Hat Trick.
Today's challenge: edible magic.
The magicians bring their creations to us, the judges, and we decide who moves on to the next round.
The magician who impresses me the least, though, will get poofed away.
The remaining contestants move on, leaving one magician standing.
The winner will get an all-expense-paid trip here to Toronto.
And an opportunity to headline one of our Toronto Magic Company shows. Will they make it through all 3 rounds and score a hat trick?
Or will they get poofed away?
This is Hat Tricks.
Okay. Well, let me give some context and then we can talk about what that was. We heard that during the pandemic, Netflix had an open submission for shows. So we thought, why not? Let's throw together an idea. And this was an idea that was bouncing around in a few people's head. You know, Jackie had the idea of like a Chopped Magic style thing. You know, Wizard Wars, you know, was obviously a key inspiration for it. And yeah, this was a mess for a lot of reasons. Why don't you talk about a few and then I can talk about a few too?
I didn't think it was a mess.
You didn't think it was a mess?
I'll have to hear your reasoning, but we shot it. I mean, there's a lot of things that did not end up being the way we wanted it to look, but like we submitted it. Netflix said yes, and we have a 6-season deal coming out with them.
That's not true.
Okay, they said no, but we made it. We submitted it. That was the end of
You didn't think there was anything negative about it? Any glaring?
I mean, I do, but I'm testing you.
Yeah, well, so I guess I'll share, like, you know, my big problem with it from the start, and this is a theme in a lot of the projects that we take on in the Toronto Magic Company, is sometimes Ben dreams up something ridiculous. And this is going to come up really big in the next one. But sometimes Ben dreams up something absolutely ridiculous. And it's not that I'm not excited about ridiculous ideas, but I'm very practical.
Our track record for ridiculous succeeding
versus practical succeeding is absolutely a no-brainer, right?
Yes.
And also, like,
one day,
one of your absolutely horrible ideas will make it. But I think what happened with this was an idea that Jackie had that was pretty clever, which was, you know, chopped magic, you know, and yeah, it's a little bit kind of like Wizard Wars, but, you know, just tailoring those two things together. Chopped magic was a good idea. And in the brainstorming, it became a mess. It just became an absolute mess of a hat that answers our questions, that questions go in it, that has challenges, and even if you just watched it, it may even be incomprehensible as to what even the competition is, why there was a talking hat, like what
his name was Hat Trick.
What even was going on. And
yes.
I think that was the big challenge with it, which is that, like, if you hit an idea right on the nose, something that makes sense, something that is clear and understandable, and you put one silly, ridiculous thing in it, it tends to work and people tend to like that silly thing. If you have a project that is hard to comprehend start to finish, because there's almost too many yes ands, you know, there wasn't any idea that was lost on the planning room floor of this thing. Every idea was, yeah, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. And I think one of the revelations, and I'd love to hear, you know, if I'm missing something or if there's, you know, an aspect, but I think one of the revelations is that Ben and I, and this is not to put fault to anybody, because, you know, Jackie made that look amazing, you know, compared to, you know, what it probably was or whatever. But, you know, one of the things that we learned is that there's a lot of different ways to collaborate with a lot of different people. And one of the things that we've gotten good at over the past 5 years is collaborating with each other. And we are both not great for lots of reasons at collaborating with other people. And we're good at it in many ways. You know, I don't want to put a shoe in that or put something in that. But what I will say is that, like, Ben and I have been really good at planning and executing, and we basically welcomed 2 other people into our planning and executing circle. And obviously there was different expectations and different, you know, we're trying to humor every single person's ideas, including Ben's, including, you know, like including my own, including every idea, every practical thought. And I think the reality is that for a project like this, you know, there's a reason why films have a writer, a director, we're like, yes, you can all go to the brainstorming table if you want to, but the writer writes the piece. And I think we all did everything, and we're all not qualified to do everything. And we said yes and to a lot of different ideas. And I think it just became something that's like, weird. You know, it looks good, it's cool in concept, but I think we got too far away from the mark of what it could have been. What do you think?
I think that number one is going back to what we had said at the very beginning of this conversation, where a lot of projects were taken on for the very first time. So it was like making a TV show, writing a storyline, putting a contest together, doing this, and it was just so many things. And all of us, you know, what you said is very true, that there were definitely times when one person would fight, myself a lot of the time would fight for a particular part, and the other people would accommodate that, and we ended up with 4 different people, no one real clear vision, ideas not fully fleshed out, stuff changing a lot. Also,
like sometimes if you take 2 ideas and one is 100, and I'm not in terms of numbers, but just to understand, one idea is a 100, one idea is a 200, and both of those are good ideas, but 150 is not a good idea. You know, meeting in the middle for multiple different ideas on a lot of different things all at once.
Well, sometimes it's that, you know, if you have 100 and 100 and you combine them, in this weird case, you don't necessarily end up with 200. You can end up with like a 90 because you don't get...
I guess what I was trying to say is sometimes each person getting a little bit of their say is not a good idea.
Right. It's like, you know what, a good analogy would be like pizza is delicious, ice cream is delicious.
Pizza ice cream is
not delicious, you know, or probably isn't. And I think that we ended up with a mess. And also, you know, one of the themes with some of these projects, and the next one will be one, especially, is that I like weird, silly ideas. They are not, you know, I do not know how to write them in such a way that my vision, like sometimes it's hard to put your vision on paper. And I forget sometimes that with magic, like I've been doing it 20 something years and I've been involved, you know, even though I'm learning constantly, it's a little easier for me to put together a magic show
than a script.
But yeah, and the fact that like I may watch certain sitcoms or comedy segments, and I have for decades, doesn't mean that I'm somehow qualified to write something like an Eric Andre sit and you know, I think we're going to see that a lot with the next one.
And I think, you know, we write characters for ourselves that we are not character actors. You know, I have never been anything but an emphatic version of Jonah, you know, on a stage, reliably.
And even that's just passable.
Yeah, I don't look like Jonah at all. But yeah, and I think that's definitely one. Now, the last one to talk about, I wish that I could actually find you some video footage.
Mercifully, God has removed it from everywhere.
Yeah.
If we find it, though, expect that maybe when we hit 10,000 followers somewhere, then we'll
maybe
we'll
on
share
YouTube,
it.
and we had 10,000 followers. We'll remake it. But basically, what this was is Ben and I had again, the original concept of this idea was people are stuck at home. Let's make a magic course so that they can learn easy magic tricks.
Which we did.
We made a small version of it, and we made a card course, which together is more or less the content or the types of content that we were going to include in this thing. But again, on our brainstorming and conversations, and I'm taking collective fault for this, even though it's probably just you.
It was me.
But again, in our brainstorming of this, a lot of ideas were, let's not just make this an educational video where people learn magic and it's fun. Let's make this a story. And let's not just make this a story, but let's make it so that we're actors and we're wizards and we wrote.
So the thought process was that I strongly advocated for was that if we were going to bother putting out content that would teach people basic magic tricks, which there is content like that already that exists, we should do something that's never been done before. We want to push new boundaries, try new things, do something that's uniquely us. So the concept I came up with was, I called it something like the Breakfast Magic series.
So they're Twizzlers.
Or the Cereal Breakfast series. But it would be, we would put out 4 videos, and each one started with either me or Jonah or both of us waking up in the morning, grabbing some sort of fun breakfast cereal, sitting in front of the TV, and watching something that would teach us magic. And then you at home would get to watch the story unfold while also learning magic. And so there would be different stories. There would be an animated one. There's like a puppet show. There was a news program. But the very first one we shot was them watching a show called Twizzards, which was like a Nickelodeon / Disney Channel style show.
So again, we were trying to produce for the very first time a 25-minute Disney style show for people to watch of, and I kid you not, this was the concept of two wizards who were locked in their house because they were cursed by a witch, and they had to figure out.
This was part of the outfit.
And whenever you see us with wizard costumes, we own them because of this project.
Yeah.
And the concept was two wizards stuck in their house.
Wait, it was a theme song. Can you sing it?
I remember bits of it, but it's like, two best wizard friends thought they were cool playing hooky skipping classes back at wizard school. Now and now they're cursed. Now they're stuck inside their library. Now they're cursed with the spells. Find the books on the shelves to try to find a way to get outside of this magical hell or something like that. I don't know what it was, but it made no sense, and it took us probably.
And remember, this is how meta it was. It was me and Jonah, housemates who lived in this house, watching a TV show starring us, but as characters in this Disney show, so that we could learn the magic tricks by watching this TV show while you at home would learn the tricks.
And my thought, no, it wasn't. My thought was, for all of history, always the way that magic is taught is somebody teaching magic. Why are we going to make a magic TV show? And we've never written a show. We're not funny. We have no idea what we're doing. And
he did mention
for
all of
us to
these things.
Teach each other magic in hopes that someone else will comprehend it is going to be really hard to shoot, as in which angles make sense and what to do.
But I had a compelling argument against it, which was, I said, nah, brah, nah. It'll be
You
fine.
make it sound like really you
fine.
ranted and raved about how, well, if we're just going to release regular magic, then I don't want any part of it. If we're just going to release regular magic, then I don't want any part of it. What happened? Well, when we released regular magic, people bought it, and then when we couldn't even release this thing because even the first time that
we were in a green screen and we were being transported to volcanoes. We were transformed into dogs at one point.
Incomprehensible content.
It was pretty crazy.
Incomprehensible content. What can you learn from it?
Well, I became better at listening to the people around me. I think that and I mean this sincerely, that there's no point, and vice versa. I think we all learn, but like, there's no point in cultivating smart, talented, wonderful people around you if they're going to tell you like, yo, this is really problematic. And you're like, shove it.
Yeah.
We're going to do it because
my idea or the highway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that like what happens sometimes is I'll come up with something that I think is really fun and weird, and someone will be like, this is problematic. So I say, okay, we put that on the back burner, focus on a better way to do this project that we think is more, I don't want to say like pragmatic or practical, but something that like, because we still want to push the boundaries of things we do, but like something that allows us to get the project done and at the same time keep developing these weird ideas, and maybe in 6 months or a year or 5 years or whatever, you have a project.
And I think, by the way, for the most part, the reason why some of not all of these, but the reason why many of these went off the rails is because, number one, we did something that we'd never, ever, ever done before. Not even like adjacent to something we've done before. Just completely never have done before. And the other is what you just said about like practicality, which is that like, I think our ideas being 10% crazy are awesome. Us building a virtual magic convention where people can go to the roller coaster and Ben and I are screaming, like crazy. That's fun. That's hilarious. That's a fun video to shoot. When the core content...
And also, we gave ourselves time to do that.
Yeah.
We spent the first 3 months developing it. Then we gave ourselves 5 months after the first convention to launch the second. Now we're working, I think I can tip it. By the time they get this, they'll know.
Yeah.
We're working on the third one, which will be out 4 months or so, 3 months after. So we have time to really develop these ideas. So even though they're a little outside the box, it's not like we, like you said, that 10%, we tried to bite off less big chunks.
Yeah, we try to do things that are a
it.
little bit out of the box and not like incredibly out of the box. 2 questions. The first is, which of these is your favorite failure?
I mean, the most valuable one, I think, to me was the Halloween show, because that one I thought was, with the product we created and the idea was really, really cool, and I was bummed with the ill will that was created, like the tension, I should say.
And that was probably the last straw of your wild, crazy ideas. That my way or the highway. Like that was that was an important moment.
And I think like I can say that I took responsibility and I changed the way, to some extent, that I work. I mean, like, we both communicate pretty effectively with each other when something's bothering us. So I know the things that I do that upset Jonah and vice versa. So I try to, like, I am more aware of doing them. But yeah, that one I was a big valuable life lesson. The unconventional book I kicked myself for because it was such a stupid, like, that is such a stupid error that, like, had I taken 30 seconds to Google, like, what is the right way to mail, like, everything would have been fixed. So, like, don't make little errors like that. Don't assume.
I would say my favorites are, I think the Magic Out Loud one was really interesting because it felt like we had everything on our side. We had beautiful images, we had people support, and we had an idea that we thought was so cheap that it was a no-brainer, and people didn't want it. And that one I felt like, I made a lot of mistakes in assuming that launching a product on the tail end of something that we did for the very first time, instead of just letting the dust settle and letting people be happy with us and not, sick of being marketed to, which we had just done for weeks, was a big lesson in just, and every single time in my life that I pre-sell something, it succeeds. And whenever I don't pre-sell something, it more or less fails. Like, when I say, hey, this thing is about to happen, here's the place to get it, before there's like fancy pages up or anything else like that, I get to get a vibe for kind of what people think.
And there interest? Is there a product market fit?
And this was an example where we just said, people will definitely want this.
We told ourselves this was a no-brainer. People will want this.
We talked ourselves into it being a good idea without even talking to anybody. And same thing about the swag, but I was going to say the swag is my other favorite one. Because we do have a bunch of cool shirts and mugs that we get to use and drink. Like, I love that I get to have TMC mugs and drink out of them, and like,
are you wearing a TMC shirt right now?
I'm not, but I wear, like, he's wearing another shirt from us. Like, we basically, like, 60% of our wardrobe is Toronto Magic Company shirts, and like, Ben and I are, I think, different sizes, so we use up about, a third of them, and so that one's probably my favorite because I think that, like, the spoils of our failure is we have lots of giveaways, we have lots of fun stuff, like,
plus the product looks dope.
Yeah, and they look cool, so I'm not terribly worried about it. The last thing that I want to ask is about lessons. What is, like, the biggest thing that you've learned from all of our failures in 2020? I think all of these happened in 2020. So
put yourself in a position to succeed, and for us that means you have to give yourself the time to execute. So, like, if you're putting your show together a week before the show, you're in trouble probably already, right? Like, we should have all the props a week, 2 weeks before the show, so we're practicing. We have, we give ourselves time to do edits. We give ourselves time to test things out, see that it's not working in case we have to write something new or modify a method or change the, something that we were trying to green screen didn't work. So now we have to, if we're doing it the night before, you're stressed out. We have different levels of improvisational comfort and different levels of or different things that need, just give yourself time to succeed. Don't.
Yeah, I like that. Mine, I would say,
give yourself time to succeed.
That's a good, it's a good one. Like, give yourself the time. And mine is, I would say, it's on the lines of collaboration. I don't really have a succinct way of saying it, but I think that, like, be creative in the execution and be level-headed in the creation. Like, I think that when we create with practicality in mind and execute with creativity in mind. Like, one thing that I've done all my life, always with every project, is I copy a strategy that's working, right? Like, I've I try to model, if we're going to launch a show, I model it after the other shows that may have launched. Right. Or if we do something, like, I have to understand the numbers or the situation or the marketing, whatever, of another example of something like this. And I think that when we do something that I can't even compare it to when we think of the idea, that's probably a red flag because it's going to be hard to explain to other people. That being said, while we're creating, there's unlimited room for us to be weird and creative and ourselves. And, like, let's have a course have videos like a course should, but we make jokes during those videos, and we should not have a course be a TV show that people watch while they eat popcorn and tuna or whatever, whatever it was meant to be. And just as a running example, like, using a model, using something practical to launch a project, and then being creative with the execution, with the marketing, with the content, that I think is a big aha for me, versus like let's do something bonkers that's never been done before. Because I think the small, like I'm not terribly worried about the Halloween failure. I'm not terribly worried about the swag failure. The book failure was one that I felt was just due to like time and not, dotting our I's and stuff. But the three big real failures is Twizzards, Hat Tricks, and Magic Out Loud. And I think those were failures because of us launching things that we had no idea if people actually wanted. They were, stuff that were just like, weird and strange.
Total
from
departures
the get-go.
from things that we had proven
Anything
track
we had
record
ever
with.
done before.
Yeah, for sure.
And certainly a big lesson. Any final parting words or
yes,
lessons?
I
for
have to
people
use the
about this?
washroom pretty bad.
Well, there you have it, folks. All of our failures, including Ben's ability to hold in his bladder. This was awesome.
Not pee.
Okay. This was awesome. And I think maybe we'll do another one talking about all the different projects we've tackled
Sure.
But I thought that this would kind of be a fun way to share some of the things that we've done that's worked and that hasn't worked. And if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, I would love to know what is something that you tried in 2020 that worked and something that you tried in 2020 that did not work. I think we can learn a lot from, thank you. Yeah. I think we can learn a lot from our failures. And this was super fun. As long as we all know that it was all his fault, I think that's a great way.
I think that was clear.
We can, I think that's the moral.
Okay, well, I'm going to go pee. You guys stay classy. And I'll see you next time at the washroom.
That's disgusting. Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As usual, if you liked it, definitely talk about it, share it, spread the word, tell a friend. It means the world. But this time, if you're on YouTube, or if you're thinking about going on YouTube, if right now you're sitting by your computer, then go to YouTube and check out Toronto Magic Company on YouTube, because we are making some content and our next goal is 1,000 subscribers. So we would love for your help to help us hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're going to be doing some strange stuff and we hope to see you there. Thanks for being a part of this. Thanks for being a part of that. And I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.